I apologize. I'm just a tad bit behind schedule, um, but we're here nonetheless. And we have a really exciting show for you on Father's Day. I typically don't do shows back to back. I try to once a month, but the opportunity came, presented itself. So we're here. Tonight's show have a new guest, Miss Jamie Kirk, and I'm going to give her an opportunity when I bring her on to tell you guys who she is. But we wanted to discuss a topic tonight that I feel that's near and dear to me, but also I think that will benefit men and women. But for those who may be viewing for the very first time, I always like to tell everyone about how a convo with BMAC came about. Um, 2021, I believe it was, I was going through a divorce. And because of that divorce, I was in a really difficult place. And while being in that particular place, I didn't see any spaces that would help me during a very difficult time. And I was fortunate enough to have some people around me uh, that encouraged me to create the space. And I was resisting at first because I said, why? How can I when I don't have the skill set or the knowledge? And they said simply, you create the space and talk about how you feel and bring those in that are professionals, and they'll fill in the gap. And 3 years later, here we are. Well, no, it's almost 4 years now because we're in 2025, and I've been fortunate enough and blessed enough to have some really amazing guests to come on. And tonight is no different. And without any further ado, I'm going to bring in Miss Jamie Kirk. Good
Hello, hello,
evening.
hello. Good evening, good evening. Happy Father's Day, happy Sunday.
Thank you. Thank you. Miss Kirk,
Mhm.
um, I'm going to give you the opportunity to just tell everyone about who you are and just do your spiel in the manner in which you'd like to.
Okay, well, as you said, my name is Jamie Kirk. I'm a licensed therapist, life coach, author, speaker. I own a nonprofit. I have a virtual practice, and I speak at schools, wherever you name it. Also, a mother of a 24-year-old king. So,
Ah, 24. You don't look like you have someone that's 24 years old.
yeah, yes, I hear that a lot.
So, just background. How did you know that you wanted to work in this field? You,
You know what? I feel like God always kind of like drew me into wanting to help people. I've
mm-hmm,
always had that heart of service. I can remember from high school,
mm-hmm,
always being giving to the special need kids,
mm,
Valentine's Day cards and just I was the nerdy, fun, spunky kind of rebel girl, but I always had a heart for people. And so I initially wanted to be a social worker.
mm,
I was gonna go to school to be a social worker,
mm.
but then I started working with social workers when I started doing early intervention work.
Okay.
And so I did that, and then I started doing monitored visitations with DCFS,
Mm-hmm,
and I didn't see where they were trying to do family reunification. They
mm,
speak on that, but I saw a little deeper than that. I saw where they was trying to keep families apart.
mm.
You have social workers that like foster parents; they want to keep the kids there instead of helping the families get them back. And so when
Gotcha.
I saw that, I'm like, that's not what I want to do. And
Mm,
so when I was interviewing schools for my master's program,
okay.
I was talking to several schools, just telling them like some things that I wanted to do. I wanted to give back to my community. I wanted to open programs to help others. And somebody mentioned the MFT program. And so
Mm-hmm.
I did some research and it felt more like me. And so 13 years later, I'm here.
That's awesome. That is awesome. You know, it's really amazing how we start. our thought process on what we want to do going one way, and we end up in a completely different path, but that's the path that's meant for us.
And see, that's what I tell people. Just start.
Hmm.
Once you start, your path will start to light up and open up for you. You have to kind of get in there to see where you feel safe, where you feel comfortable, and
Hmm.
then, continue to take that path. Because when you're going the right path, like the pathway lights up, it continues to light up for you. And you
Okay.
learn and grow, even though it may be hard, and I think that's the fearful thing about it. Some people fear that it's going to be hard. And so they use that. I feel like it's a delusional phrase, the fear of failure.
Mm.
And so they don't act, right? They say, well, I'm not going to do it because, I'm afraid of failure. And I'm like, well, that's not really afraid of failing, because that's actually doing something to ensure you're going to fail.
Right.
I would think that if you was afraid of failing, you would keep going and wouldn't stop until you accomplish it. That's my
Right.
thing. If you was
Right.
really scared. And so, just dealing with different people on a different climax just kind of keeps me in the space of wanting to continue to give.
Awesome. Well, we definitely appreciate people such as yourself that just that operate from a giving heart and want to help others get to where they desire to be and need to be.
Yes.
So, so let's start to peel back the layers here. This
Mm-hmm.
particular topic: what keeps men from opening up?
Mm.
And um, I know a lot of men will probably look at this and kind of cringe a little bit because most men are kind of machismo type of guys, like, and I'm not afraid of anything, but they'll only speak from the surface. And from my understanding, the way I view it, it is much deeper than just, oh, well, everything's fine. It's especially in ethnic communities, minority communities, it starts culturally.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
Go ahead.
think about going back to our slavery. You've
Hmm.
never been able to express emotions. It's always
Hmm.
been man up, shut up, and get your
Hmm.
work. And
Right.
so it's a generational curse,
Hmm.
through men and women.
Hmm.
You know, if I watched, I was raised by my grandfather,
Hmm.
my grandparents, but I watched plenty of men, tell their son, man up and, do this and do that. And
Hmm.
so raising my own son, when I did become more of a single mother, that's what I emulated. Okay, this is what you need to do. You need to teach
Hmm.
them to man up. You need to teach them, don't express feelings and,
Hmm.
don't do this. And for a long time, that's what I did, until I actually started going to school to realize that everybody has emotions and feelings and shouldn't really suppress them. It's a way to do it. And
Hmm.
so now I see where the generational curse comes in. If you're told, man up at a young age, not to express emotions, don't cry and don't do. Then when you grow up, that's one thing. You're told that. And then on the other end, when you do show emotion, some people use it against you.
Right.
So I can understand. I can truly understand. I wouldn't want to talk to nobody either.
Right. Right. And and with this particular topic, because it's just we're gonna kind of bounce around a little bit because just through the conversation, it's gonna go from here to there.
Hmm.
And I said on my last podcast, we have to be careful about who we're transparent with. Um, the author Jason Wilson, he talked about not using the phrase vulnerable, but using the phrase transparent, using the word transparent instead. And initially I was like, huh? And then as I sat with it, I realized that, the word vulnerable will trigger some men because we're we're taught to be strong. And
Hmm.
so when you say vulnerable, that's kind of intuitive to us, to our innateness. So we're like, I can't be vulnerable, but I can be transparent about what's going on and how I feel.
Yes, I think that's great. I think that's a better term. Whatever makes you comfortable in order
Hmm.
to be able to release those feelings and emotions,
Hmm.
but also. I think we don't really pay attention to people's character in the beginning when we meet them. You
Mm,
know, when we become friends or see somebody that we like, the things that they say that they've done in the past, or just how they perceive themselves or the world will
mm,
tell you exactly if they're a safe person to even be able to express yourself.
and you are absolutely right about that. We have such a very welcoming nature, not realizing that I haven't really paid attention to this person's character. And is this person worthy of me trusting my innermost feelings with this person, be it whom you call your best friend or your significant other, whatever the case may be? We have to really take time and, take those blinders off and say, oh, well, this is just such a great person. But let's just not judge, but evaluate what we know about them.
Yeah. And remember that everybody don't have the capacity to understand.
Ooh.
Right? We put those expectations on people, and then that'd be our fault because they don't even have that capacity to
Mm,
meet those expectations.
right. And
So
you
we just really got to know who you are really expressing yourself to.
and you're absolutely right. I had a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and they were talking about a friend of theirs, and the essential said, well, they expected them to show up in a certain way. I was like, okay, well, and then I said, well, first you have to remove your expectation of them. That's first thing. Secondly, we have to understand what capacity they have. They can't sometimes they don't have the capacity to meet you where you want them at,
Hmm.
whatever that reason may be. And you have to understand that if you're gonna have that friendship or what have you with them. So I'm glad that you said that because that just reaffirms that conversation. So I appreciate that. Um, let's talk about the danger of emotional suppression.
Mm, man, you want to go mental, physical, or emotional?
Well, let's just give an overview. We don't want to because we can spend a whole conversation going down each lane, but let's just give an overview of that part of it.
Okay. It it could drive you crazy. It
Mhm.
can make you sick.
Mhm.
It can.
And
A lot of people be ready to kill themselves
mm,
because they're not able to. They don't feel heard. They don't feel seen.
mm, that
That
and
tells you a lot about suppressing your feelings. And how many? I don't know if you had anybody commit suicide, but I have.
mm,
On the outside, you will never
mm,
can never tell. They're not walking around looking sad or depressed.
mm,
So what does that say? Holding it in.
right. That's deep. And again, this is all about what keeps us from opening up. And the next thing is that fear of judgment. You know how
Mm,
if I tell you how I feel, or I won't go to a therapist because I don't want the therapist to look at me a certain way or judge me.
mhm.
And can let's kind of help with this dispelling or helping people with this fear of judgment.
Well, see, coming from a therapist,
Uh-huh.
um, people should know that they're not the only one.
Mm,
People should know that they're not the only ones. I spoke at a brunch and I did, you see those videos, put a finger down or put a finger down if this happened to you, put a finger, but what
yeah.
I did was the opposite, put a finger up. And I went through a list of stuff. And by the time I was done, everybody had their hand raised.
Mm,
And that lets you know you're not the only one.
Right.
And me as a therapist, like I share my testimony. I share things that I've experienced so that my clients know that I just don't understand them from a therapist. I feel them, I
Right.
see them, I hear them.
Mm.
Right. And so when you have somebody in your face, like I have men, my male clients, they show up, they there and they show up with a notebook. They have a notebook, they're ready, and it's because I let them see that there's no judgment here. Like yes, I'm doing the general judgment to help you,
Hmm.
but I'm not being judgmental. And so there's a difference between a righteous judgment and being judgmental.
Okay.
Judgmental is I'm trying to change people's perception of you because of who you are and what you do. But if I'm judging you as a therapist, I'm taking what you say and I'm breaking it down because I know it's always deeper.
Mm. I like it. I like that. Um, I've spoken with different people at different times, men in encourage therapy, because I go to therapy, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, listen, it is not what you think it is. I
Yeah.
said, essentially, you're going and they're helping you sort through whatever it is you're working through, and giving you tools, you know, to work through life, no more, no less. And but what I've also come to realize and understand about with therapy is you have to be in a place emotionally to where you're willing to make that leap.
Yeah.
Um, and if you are so guarded, it's not going to help you because you can say, all right, I'm gonna go, but if you're not going to have those transparent discussions about your deepest fear, the thing that you did in life that you are the most um, either afraid of, ashamed of, XYZ,
Hmm.
it you can't truly get what you need out of the therapy.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, Therapy hurts before it helps.
Mm,
I think that's the thing that people don't realize, and
mm,
that's in my spiel. I have a whole speech, and I let people know that therapy hurts before it helps, and really, therapy is 80% you, 20% me. If
mm,
you don't do the work, you're not gonna see any results. I'm just a cheerleader. You can do it, and you come back and say, well, this not working. I say, okay, well, look, let's try this. And
mhm.
come and you go back and try it. You come back and say, well, this work or this not working. Okay, we're gonna keep this, but then let's go try this here. It's both of us doing this, but you doing the work. I
Right.
have enough tools over here so we can say, hey, this is the problem. I'm like, okay, try this, and this. And
Hmm.
then you go back and try it. And then you come back like, hey, this worked, but this didn't work. I'm like, okay, well, try this, and this and see if it helped with this.
Right.
But if you over there just still being you,
Right.
right? And I always say, if you always do what you always done, you're gonna always get what you always got.
Right.
I got that from my pastor, and it's true.
Right. And you
If you
absolutely.
don't if you don't open up and be transparent, not
Mm,
vulnerable, transparent.
hmm.
But excuse my French, but hell, be vulnerable with yourself.
Whew.
Hell with transparent. You can be transparent with everybody else, but be vulnerable with yourself. Trust yourself to even release that.
Mm. Listen, you just said a word then, and that if I had to say anything, I would encourage guys, men, to try that. Just start in the mirror, looking at yourself, being honest. You know, being vulnerable with yourself, or sitting with yourself and just saying, "Man, listen, I know what I tell myself, but this is the truth." Starting there.
Listen, first tell yourself, I am not my trauma.
Mm,
I am not my trauma. The things that happened to me had nothing to do with me. And I think that's where people fail to remember.
mm-hmm,
Like that most people trauma comes from childhood.
mm-hmm.
Whether you was poor And so your trauma is you didn't have, and your parents struggled, or you was rich, and your trauma is your parents worked a lot and wasn't there.
Either way, there was trauma. Now let's back up just a little bit. I think some people define trauma as something like something violent. But trauma can be so many different things. Because it's more about how it impacted you.
Mhm.
So give me a little bit about that.
Trauma could be you not getting praised as a kid.
Mm,
And so now you're not used to praise as an adult. You just work, 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 accomplish goals, and you never feel appreciated because you never take the time to appreciate yourself.
mm,
Trauma could be not getting a hug from your mom or dad. If you grew up in the 80s, trauma could be seeing your parents on drugs. Like both I my father sold drugs. My mama was on drugs, prostitute trauma. Growing
mm.
up in the 80s, if you grew up in LA, trauma.
Right,
If you grew up and you can say you was anywhere in the vicinity where you can walk to where the LA riots was, you suffer from some kind of trauma.
right.
What happens when the police pull up next to you? What happens when you hear a loud noise? Now you grow up feeling unsafe, unheard, unseen. Trauma.
Okay. I like it. I like it. Because I want to just give a wider spectrum because people think, like I said, they think trauma is defined as this overt type of act, and trauma it is just bigger than that. And like I said, I've learned through therapy that a lot of our childhood traumas affect us as adults now, and how we behave and approach certain things are because of those traumas that we haven't dealt with.
Yeah, right. And I could be totally honest, like, and just in doing my own research and seeing my clients, like, trauma in men from their moms can be very detrimental.
Mm,
Could be very detrimental. It can, because it affects how they see themselves and how they see women.
hmm.
And
Interesting.
that can be very dangerous because we look for men to be our providers, and not necessarily financial providers, but be the head. And if you feel this way about yourself and then about the women you're around, how are you going to treat them and how are you going to treat yourself? What are you going to accept? You're not going to accept the love you really deserve because you're
Mm.
not going to give it to yourself.
Ooh, that's heavy. And you're absolutely right. Not really knowing how to accept yourself and love yourself. So it's hard to allow someone who genuinely wants to just love you to receive that from
Yeah.
you. You're only going to allow them so close. And
Hmm.
um, I don't remember who it was I was talking to, and I told them, I said, like earlier on, um, my college years, whatever, when I dated and what have you, you know, for me, the girlfriends I had, it was very surface level. They didn't know that, but I knew that because I didn't know how to allow someone to truly love me.
Hmm.
Um, and so it just over time, I began to learn that, okay, well, you have, it's okay to allow someone in and to see you in not a perfect light. And like, you don't have to have everything right. Those that truly care about you, they're gonna love you and your flaws. They're gonna care for you on your good days, bad days, and different.
Yeah. Can I ask you, you
Mm.
know, when was the first time you felt seen?
Whew. First time I felt seen.
felt seen, like people
Seen,
see you and
right.
love you, and
Um, I'm trying to think now. Of course, my mom passed in '04, but I all went around here. I always felt seen. I I knew I could be heard when talking to her and seen. Even without speaking, she could see, where I was.
Mhm. Now, now you said she passed in '04,
Hmm.
and I'm sorry to hear that. And so you haven't felt seen since?
I have, but that was the one person that um I didn't feel like I had to kind of, you know, help them along to help them understand who I was.
Okay.
But I will say that I'm fortunate enough now to have some really good friends in my life that, they see me and they hear me.
Mhm.
And, it's safe as if I call one of them on the phone and if my voice didn't sound right, they're like, "Hey, what's going on?"
Okay.
So,
Now, what about your dad?
mm, now my dad, um, my dad is super guy. Me and him talked earlier today, and he sees me and he hears me, and he's every chance he gets, he tells me how proud he is. So,
Well, when have you ever felt unsafe to open up? And to
um,
who?
I see what you're doing, but we go roll with it. I see what you're doing, but we gonna roll with it for the sake of what we got going on. Of course, just growing up as a young black male, the environment was never, for the most part, hey, express yourself. It's hey, you don't hey, wipe them tears. What you crying for? It was it wasn't always that environment was not, hey, well come here, let me talk to you. Let's understand why you're crying, you know,
Mhm.
telling you it's okay to cry, but let's how kind of figure out how to process your emotions. So it's a little different to say, okay, well, you can feel seen, but
Mhm.
is this environment teaching you? Was that environment an environment to teach you what you were feeling, help you understand why you were feeling it, and be able to put names with it?
Yeah. And and it's funny that you said that because you mentioned the block,
Hmm.
and because regardless of what you learn in the house,
Hmm.
block and life still teach you
Right.
to shut down.
Hmm.
Right. And it's
Hmm.
funny because I actually have a chapter in my book called Lessons from the Block: Wisdoms and Wounds from Growing Up Black.
Mm. Okay.
And then they teach you shut down your emotions. Don't show your emotions. It's not safe to show people your emotions.
Right.
And so when you grow up in a neighborhood to
Hmm.
show you that, some people had it in their families, and then your relationships, you haven't had a safe space because we know some people use it against you.
Right.
You got so many avenues that keeps men from opening up, and I can understand it.
Well, and just to segue a little, not necessarily segue, but ideally after this show, my goal is to do a follow-up show, and I'm hoping to get 3 or 4 guys to come on and just do a roundtable to talk about and just get hey man, I don't feel comfortable or I didn't feel comfortable because of this, or and if they feel comfortable sharing a particular instance of why, that's awesome. But ultimately, I just want to encourage men to say, look, like you said before, you're not alone. You're not the only person that has gone through this, um, and you can get through this just like this person, this person, this person. But it takes you being an active participant in your own rescue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And and like you said, being vulnerable with yourself first.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people don't trust themselves with the emotions that may come up.
That is, and just as a man who wasn't, who hadn't always been comfortable in that space, it's a very scary thing
Yeah, I
because
can imagine.
you haven't been taught how to deal with and process emotion. You haven't been taught emotional regulation.
Hmm.
So now you have all these different emotions flying through. You're trying to put on a brave face, like I'm a man, I got this, but you're just hoping that you don't screw it up. You faking it till you make it.
Right. Right. And you know what is, I think it's even worse if you're a single mother raising a son, because how do you teach them emotional regulation as a man? You
Mm.
know, when I had my son, I got married, we were married for about 6 years, got a divorce, I became more of a single mom. I was going really through my own healing process, from childhood trauma. I got real childhood trauma. And
Right.
so at some point I would start realizing that stuff was affecting me,
Hmm.
even how I was parenting. And
Mm.
so I went through life really just like healing. I went through motherhood healing. And so my son saw different aspects of me. He saw the wounded me, the going through healing me, the more healed me, right? And so I remember, you know, I would always tell him, you can express your emotions, or you can talk to me if there's a problem and you have an option to bring the problem to me. We can discuss it, or you can hold it in, but you better not have no attitude because you're choosing not to express it. And so, he felt comfortable expressing. I still had to teach him on boundaries on that. Um, but at one point, he would cry anytime that I would, try. I would say teach him a lesson, and it wouldn't be like whipping him or anything. Just one thing I would tell him, like, and it was more so my feelings and not because someone told me, just something that I feel because I saw a man should never have no money in his wallet. Like, you should never be broke. You shouldn't have, don't spend all your money on frivolous things. Save your money, build that. And so as I'm telling him this, he started to cry. And I was like, well, like, no, you're not in trouble. I was teaching you a lesson. Like, come on, son, you got to manage your emotions. And the first thing he said is, you never taught me how to manage my emotions. And then I stopped. I'm like, well, actually, I did. That's why you hear crying,
Right.
like a woman. I said, I can't teach you how to manage your emotions because I'm not a man. I've never been that mom that be like, I can raise a black man. I can't. There's certain things that I don't know as a man that I cannot teach you. I can only try to bring positive people. And so here you go. You have women that we don't know how men should really manage emotions. It's just what
Mhm.
we think in our head. And like,
Right.
this is how you should be. And then they grow up and realize, no, that's not how we should be.
Right. We have this idea. In some instances, you have this idea of what you think it should be, but because that's not it's not in your DNA to do so. It's like, well, I guess I could be wrong.
Well, it's what we grew up seeing.
Right. Exactly. And we emulate what we see. You know,
Yeah. You see
then
the
when
men
kids,
in our life yelling at the men in their lives, like, okay, well, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to yell at them and put fear in them. And that's what the men did in our family. And do you realize that's why they all screwed up? Like, oh, shoot.
right, and I tell people all the time, like, parenting is not a perfect science. It's not. They give you this
Mm-mm.
thing to say go forth and be prosperous, and we just hope that we don't screw it all the way up. But
Yeah.
it's a continuous learning curve.
Mm.
Um, and even with multiple kids in the home, you may say, "Well, I got the second one. I'm ready now." No, because every child is different, and
Mm.
so it is not a carbon copy, one of one. Uh, so it's you have to be always open to learning that particular child and their needs so you can meet them where they are and not just say, well, well, if I was hard on this one, but they were receptive to that. You can't be hard on the next one just
Mm-hmm.
because you think that that's what's going to work, because the next one
Right.
may be, um, for lack of better terms, a little bit more sensitive, and they may need more verbal encouragement, more support.
Mm-hmm.
The older one may just need to be pushed,
Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding those aspects of it, and parenting is a very difficult job, just in general, and with the cultural issues that we faced, that only made it that much more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one thing that I will say is this, that I say a lot of is, despite what our background is, once we become adults, it's on us at that point. You can blame your childhood all you want, but at a
Right.
certain point, now that you're an adult, you're responsible for the plight of your life, the direction of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. What they say, your trauma may not be your fault, but your healing is your responsibility.
Mm, and that indeed is the case. Um, we can't allow um, bad experiences to dictate whether we want to grow and heal.
Yeah. It's funny because I always say it's a delusion.
Hmm.
We think we're punishing the person,
Mm,
right? We think we're getting justice, but we are doing the time ourselves. Like,
yeah, and you're right. You know what I'm saying? We're putting ourselves in this jail or prison or whatever. I'm gonna show them. But only thing you're doing is you're punishing yourself, unbeknownst to you. And,
yeah,
as opposed to saying, that happened. I don't have to carry that. I'll once I release this baggage and start, working through it, I'm going to feel better. Life may not just instantaneously turn around and be better, but I promise you, life in some respects will get better for you.
yeah, yeah. But the I give my clients an analogy, like when you walk in a hospital and you see a heart monitor and it's going up and down,
Hmm.
what does that mean?
Hmm.
It means you're alive, right?
Right.
And that's life, up and down. If you're going down, you can't go nowhere but up, and when you're up, you gotta prepare for your downs because
Right.
that's what life's about.
Hmm.
But if you walk in that same hospital and you see a flat line, then there's no life.
Right.
And that's the life that we want, just a straight line with no bumps, no curves. But that's not life at all.
Right.
And so we can't think that the universe or God is against us
Hmm.
when we are in I used to call it our planting season,
Hmm.
because a seed has to be buried in order to grow.
Mm. That is a very difficult concept to accept, because, like I said, we want things just to always naturally be good, and some sometimes we have to go through adverse situations so we can get to that better. That because we may be comfortable here, but we're meant for something else. So therefore, now we've got to go through some things so we can get to that next level, and
Mm,
we may not understand it at that time when we're going through whatever it is we're going through.
yeah.
And I saw something this while back, and it was the football player Brian Dawkins, and he said, he was pretty much talking about keeping everything in perspective. How we view life can determine how we feel about a lot of things.
Mhm.
And if we perceive everything as negative and against us, we're gonna be miserable. But if we perceive as an adverse situation as an opportunity for us to learn,
Mhm.
get better, and understand that it ain't got to be fair. We ain't got to like it, but you know, it ain't gonna last forever. And
Right.
and somehow, some way, this is gonna make me better.
Yeah. And you can't go with the flow of life.
Hmm.
That's where people that's where people mess up. Like they go with the flow of life and mad where they end up instead of being intentional about where they want to go.
Mm.
You know, I look at like sitting in a kayak in the middle of the ocean and you see the shore over there. So you're
Hmm.
just gonna sit in a kayak and let the waves take you. Right. And so they may take you to a shore and you may get on that shore or plant a village on it, but you're not gonna be completely happy because you know that wasn't the shore that you really wanted to be on. When you could have just used your oars and gone to where you want to get to. You know, but people don't want to go through the process or whatever that process is of completing that goal. And really that process is what builds you, what makes
Right.
you ready. Because honestly, I tell people this mentally, you're not ready for that thing that you want. Because if you were, you would have it.
Mm.
You're gonna be ready by the time you get there. But if you never start that process, you never gonna get there.
That is one of those tough statements where you have to sit with it and be like, you're right, because if you someone gives you something but you're not ready for it, it's gonna self-destruct at some point anyway. And now you like, man, I don't know why this happened to me. Oh, if you sit with it long enough, you will.
You know exactly why it happened.
Exactly. But
Hmm.
that requires that those accountable and vulnerable conversations with yourself.
Hmm.
I remember this was years ago. Um, they had opened up a sergeant's position, and I was eligible for it. And so my lieutenant at the time asked me. He said, "Well, why didn't you apply?" He was like, "You were eligible for it." I said, "Because I didn't believe that I was ready for it yet. I I was like, there's still a lot that I need to learn, and just applying for it just because I'm eligible,
Hmm.
I didn't feel like that was the right thing to do. Once I learned and go through the things I need to go through, I'll and it's open again, I'll apply." But it was one of those things where I was just like, okay, if I'd applied and they just gave it to me, and I did it, and my thoughts process was I did a terrible job. Then it's like, yeah, should never promote him in the first place. So even worse, you get demoted. But I'm the
Right.
type that I want to
Right.
be ready when I want. If it's something for me, I want to be prepared for it. I want to be ready for that thing, and not just say,
Mhm.
"Oh, give it to me and I'll figure it out."
That's like adding stuff to your resume and getting a job. You don't know nothing about it.
Right? Yeah, I'm a network designer. I get the job, and I'm like,
Right.
I'm asking Chat GPT how do you know? That's not
Listen,
me.
I'm a fake it till you make it type of person in some areas, but no, not in all areas.
Exactly. There's some areas you got to use a little bit of wisdom on.
Yeah, yeah. But and that goes back to knowing who to open up to,
Hmm.
using with and but also being in relationships.
Hmm.
Because you don't think that's what does it? Relationships. Somewhere down the line, someone told you don't trust people with this information. Either you've seen how they reacted to other people, you've seen how they talked about other people,
Hmm.
right? Because as bad as men talk about gay men, if your friend is gay, how open do you think he is going to be like, okay, I mean, you didn't talk down, talk bad about every gay man you've seen.
Right. Exactly. And you're right. And it it's one of those things to where you know, we've experienced enough circumstances and situations to where we're very leery about, how we move, or if, like, even to the extent of you had a bad relationship where you trusted someone and they just did you wrong, and they put all of, your deepest darkest stuff, and they told anybody that would listen. So
Mm.
now you're like,
I ain't telling nobody nothing else.
the women ain't worth a dang. I ain't looking at, and, and
Yeah.
and one of the things with that is, like, I this show is, I say it's, initially it was supposed to be a quote unquote for men, but I realized quickly that no, it's not, because women can learn a lot about our perspective,
Yeah.
um, by listening. And some women may not even be aware of how they're offending
Right.
their significant other, because they were raised a certain way and they just think, oh well, it's just this. But
Yeah.
by sitting and talking and listening, you get a different perspective. You're like, I had no idea that affected him in that way.
Hmm. And I think I want to say just the lack of communication,
Hmm.
not knowing your communication style,
Mm.
right? And so, if I always come at you and say you did this and you become defensive,
Hmm.
right? But if I come to you and say, B Mac, when you do that, it makes me feel unseen.
Mm.
You know,
Right.
are you gonna come at me a little different? Are you gonna feel, because the offense is down because I'm not just, gyrating you and you this and you this. I'm like, hey, when you do that, it makes me feel like this. But then
Right.
it also lets me see two things. If you do it again,
Hmm.
you don't care about my feelings.
Right. Well, and most men, if they truly care about a person and they're said, hey, I don't like this because it makes me feel this way, most men are gonna feel convicted, and they're gonna be like, because that's the last thing they want, someone you care about to.
Yeah, to feel like it, yes.
So, and so I definitely agree that, you're right. Communicating effectively, um, and understanding that person's communication style.
Right, but also understanding that how you truly feel.
Hmm.
Because anger, I look at it like an iceberg.
Hmm.
Anger is the tip of the iceberg, but
Hmm.
how you truly feel is underneath. And so, what are you truly feeling that's causing the anger? That's what you communicate. I'm feeling frustrated because of this.
Right.
I'm feeling hurt. I'm feeling unseen. Those things. But when you're just like, I'm mad, well, not too many people care about you being bad, right?
And well, and and you're right. Well, because that person can reply to, "I'm mad too," and and here's the thing. Okay, yes, you're mad, and you say this is the service. It's the service. You spent too much money on this. Okay, yes, that's the issue, but there's a deeper issue under that, and that's
Mm,
what you really need to be. Got to try to articulate in a manner that you feel comfortable expressing and that they can receive, and that it doesn't feel like an attack
yeah.
one way or the other. Because you spend too much money, you always spend too much. That person's gonna get defensive now, and so now y'all on two separate sides, throwing darts at each other.
Hmm.
So, um, it's one of those things to where, yes, man, we fear, we don't want to open up because whenever XYZ, but some of it at times, if we're honest with ourselves, is our own fault, because the manner in which we approached it. If we came out guns blazing, and
Yeah.
so now our significant other got defensive,
Hmm.
yeah, you probably gonna be like, you know what? I don't even want to talk about this no more. I don't want to ever go down that road of discussing how I feel because I'm always, met with guns blazing on the other end, not realizing that if my approach had been, Jamie, this happened. I know we talked about this before, but you did this and it made me feel this way. And now you're left to sit with that and not, I'm angry. I'm like, well,
Right.
you mad, be super mad, put your cape on.
Look, you took my words out. Put a cape on. You know what I'm saying? Superman, yeah. But see, if you're in a relationship, these conversations need to be held in the beginning.
Hmm.
If I don't feel safe in the beginning,
Hmm.
then that's a red flag.
Mm.
We should be able to have that conversation.
Mm.
Like, hey, if you do something that I don't that makes me feel a type way in the beginning, if I say, hey, this kind of makes me feel this, and how you respond in the beginning will
Hmm.
let me know how the relationship gonna be.
Right. And I'm glad you said that. Um, is early on, you have to have some of these kind of tough conversations early on because what you don't want 5, 10 years down the road, and now all the levy debit wore off,
Yeah.
and, and now y'all just roommates or whatever because y'all can't communicate.
Right. But also, not just have the tough conversations,
Hmm.
see past the person. And so when they say something that's a hard no,
Hmm.
gotta be able to let them go.
Mm.
I know two people right now. Well, one, they've been married like 20 years, but the husband is bipolar. So for
Mm.
the past 20 years, it's been manic episodes and yelling and screaming and fighting. And, now they're in therapy and it's just like, who, you know, what do we do? Well,
Right.
because we know mental illness is uncurable. And so if you decide to get in a relationship with somebody that has a mental illness,
Hmm.
then you can't complain when the symptoms show up
Right.
because you fell in love with their character, but those symptoms gonna show up, baby.
Right.
And you gotta be able to differentiate them. You can't be mad at the character because the symptoms showed up.
Mm. That's a tough one. That is. I'm just gonna be. That's a tough one. And um, whew.
Look, you crying on that one.
Because it's one of those things to where, like I said, understanding, hey, this is part of that package, and it requires a lot of work. Uh, can it be done? Yes, but understanding that it requires this ain't no free ride. This you go earn your paycheck, every day with that one.
You're not even gonna earn your worth.
Mm. So
You're not even gonna earn your worth. Like, so you said having all of those hard conversations. And for women, and I'm sad to say it because I see it in therapy. Be back like, it's us, it's
hmm.
us, it's us, it's us, it's us. I was like, women, oh my God, women. I'll be trying to cap for it, but it's us. We the reason y'all don't want to open up. We always yapping, 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 telling you what you should and shouldn't do, what you can and can't be, how you should and shouldn't feel. And then when you tell us how you feel, we take it personal. Like, I'm working with them. I'm trying, y'all. I'm trying.
Listen, I'm just gonna say I fully appreciate you saying that, because I'm sure there gonna be some men that see this and they gonna be like, Look, and then they go call their significant other and say, hey, hold on, let me play this back right quick. But it,
This may not be the only time I go viral, huh? Like, it's a
look,
shot.
look, I'm just gonna tell you, it's gonna be some men that's gonna loop that clip. Like, hey, protect this woman at all costs.
I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help.
But there is truth to that. But I will also say, us as men, we don't make it easy either. You know, because sometimes that woman that's like this, she's tried different approaches,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
we were so nonchalant about everything. That was the only thing that got our attention.
Yeah.
So we have to take ownership of our role in things. Not to say that this person's wrong, this person's right. No,
Right.
I feel like taking ownership of whatever role you played in it. So hey, let's deconstruct this so we can build something better.
Yeah.
Understanding and understanding it from that standpoint.
Right. And also understanding that, just because someone says that change is needed in this area doesn't mean that, you know, you're a bad person and something is wrong with you. It's just these areas where they don't feel safe.
Mm.
It's all about feeling safe, really. If I
But
don't feel safe, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna open up to you. I'm not gonna cry to you. I'm not gonna do anything. That's on both ends. That's on both ends because a lot of us women don't feel safe opening up our feelings to men either because I've had men, well, if you don't like me, then why are you with me? Well, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and go out there because you don't even want to address the reason why I'm feeling this way. She said, well, if you feel this way, then why are you here? You know
look,
what? You're right. You're right.
and I hate that we're getting so close to the end of the show because this is a very important part. Because there are a lot of men that don't really understand making a woman feel safe is more than being physically able to provide security and safety. It is a lot more than that.
Yeah.
You know, say just a safe space that that knowing that you have their best interest at heart and you're going to protect their thoughts, feelings, their heart, all those things. So when if whether it's her coming home and being able to vent about how her day was, the coworker that she can't stand, or
Hmm.
when her and her BFF ain't seeing eye to eye and she needs to vent about that, or
Yeah.
what happened to her in sixth grade where somebody touched her inappropriately, creating that safe space for them to discuss those very vulnerable moments
Right.
and knowing that okay, you're not there to fix it,
Yeah.
you're there to be a listening ear and to support.
Right. Yeah.
So
And I just think it's a lot of men's nature to fix it.
I I had a conversation the other day about that. Unfortunately for us as men, I feel like it's in our genetic makeup to want to fix. If we care about you, we want to fix it. Whether it's your wife, girlfriend, daughter, best
Yeah.
friend, mama. If you call and say, "Hey, this is an issue," we think we're supposed to fix it, and
Yeah.
sometimes it ain't for us to fix.
Right. Right.
It's just for us to create an environment for you to say, "Hey, this is going on," and allow that person to express whatever it is they have going on with them.
Right. I think it's just that one simple question that both parties can ask.
Hmm.
What do you need from me?
Mm,
Whatever is going on, well, what do you need from me? How can I help? If they say nothing, take that nothing. Nothing that you can do for somebody that don't need anything from you right
right.
now.
Gotcha. Listen, I think you just our conversation. I feel like another show topic, just offshoot of this. You know, what is a safe space, and what does that look like? Um,
Mm.
and I think that that could be extremely beneficial to a lot of people. So that's I'm gonna have to make a mental note of that because I have these ideas and then I'll be like, man, what was that? I was like, it was good too.
Where's your notepad? You ain't got no notepad in front of you?
No, I'll just type it in my phone. Because my handwriting, if I get to try, I write too fast. I'm like, I can't even read. I'd be like, what was that? I was just like, 'cause
Okay,
trying to
it's
scribble it
not
down,
just me.
and scribble it down, and then I'm looking at it like,
It's not just me then. Okay,
well, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, I should have just typed it. I should have
type
just.
it in. Now I keep stickies on my desk because I'm always taking little notes and um I'm sometimes gotta be speaking to me and I'll just write it down because it'd be for later. So gotta keep stickies and stuff written down. I'm still into the handwritten stuff, but I truly enjoyed tonight's conversation. I always enjoy conversations where we're speaking positive, but it's not bashing.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not in.
yeah, I'm not much into engaging in negative dialogues because I don't feel like any of that's beneficial.
Yeah,
I,
correct. Yeah.
you can have those conversations, you can point out negatives, but if it's not in a constructive manner to try to come up with solutions, I'm not into any of that.
Or at
I
least understanding.
Well, exactly. Um, understanding the other side, you may not ever, you don't have to agree, but having an open mind and heart to hear and just understand where that person's coming from.
Hmm.
Uh, because that's the only way you can learn and grow, in my opinion.
Right, and being respectful.
Right. Oh, definitely. If it look, that's a non-starter. If you can't be respectful, you can't talk.
Yeah.
So I just that's not even how I function in life. Um,
Okay.
I truly appreciate you. I hope that I can get you back on some point in the future.
Sure.
I appreciate
Definitely.
I appreciate you. We go. I have to do better with my scheduling because I'm all over the place at times. Just this is a passion of mine. My career field is something completely different. So
Yeah. No, I get you because getting my podcast going. You see, oh, can't even see my little corner here, my
uh,
little recording corner. But yeah, I got to get prepare mine, and I'm trying to get in the habit of pre-recording, but I don't feel like
I, I I understand. I trust. It's just for me. I thoroughly enjoy doing um, live shows versus pre-recordings.
it.
Because we're in one of those situations where we actually have comments, um, it makes it makes it that much more interactive.
Yeah.
And one of my little sisters just chimed in. She wanted to tell me happy Father's Day. Thank you, Charo.
Yeah.
So, um, but anytime I can have people engage, and if they have questions right then, it's because now they're able to feel seen from their perspective.
Yeah.
They can engage. So that's I enjoy live shows, but I definitely will talk more offline about getting you on for the next show, and we'll figure out what topic works for you. Um, but you seem just based on our conversation, you like just give it to me. I'm a roll with it.
I'm very versed in a lot of different things. What is that? I know a lot about a little, or a little about a lot. What does it say? A little about a lot. That's what it says. I know a little about a lot.
But with no further ado, I always close out with a prayer. So I'm going to do a really quick prayer, and then we'll close out and we'll chop it up
All righty.
offline. All right. Father God, we come to you to thank you, Lord God, for this day. Lord God, we thank you for this blessed Father's Day. Lord God, we ask that you watch over each and every person that's able to take in any portion of this episode. Lord God, we ask that you watch over our guest, Miss Kirk, and her family. Lord God, we ask that you give us strength and courage and all the things that we need to have a blessed and prosperous week. In your son Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
And before we go, if anybody's looking for a therapist and they want to get in contact with you, how can they get in contact with
You could find me on the best way to contact me. My number directly would be 951-258-5907. You can find me on Instagram at I am Jamie Kirk or Facebook Jamie Kirk.
you? Awesome. Because I talk to people all the time. They were like, how do I find a therapist?
Now, I'm
And
licensed. I'm licensed for therapy in California, so I do virtual therapy for people in California. But as a coach, that's the difference between being a therapist and a life coach. A therapist is licensed, and we go through the clinical stuff. A life coach, they just got life experience, so they can deal with anybody. And so, because I do both, the people that get the life coach and they get the clinical as well.
they get a 2-for-1. Let me find out you run a 2-for-1 special around here.
Well, I have a simple well, I won't say simple, but I just have a process that I do with my clients. The same thing that I do with my therapy clients. And that's actually what I did with my book. I created a workbook. It's called the Relationship Workbook, but it teaches you about your boundaries, your attachment styles, your communication styles, emotional regulations. And so I use these things to help you reframe your thinking. And then we'll start talking about how to accomplish your goals. Because the reality is, like, people that are struggling with depression, the more you start to see yourself succeeding and progressing in life, the less you're depressed. People are usually depressed because they're not happy with their lives. They're not happy with where they are in some area. And so if you focus on an area that you're not happy in and create a process to getting how you want it.
All right, Ms. Kirk. That's what I'm talking about. I love it. I love it.
Thank you for having me, B-Mac. I truly appreciate it.
Ma'am, thank you.